Hello, my name is Janveer Sandhu, and I'm the Internship and Training Manager here at HomeFirst. Welcome to the training on self-care and promoting wellness. Okay, so first I want to talk to you about what is stress and what does stress look like. So I want you to first list a few things in which you can feel stressful or they feel stressful to you in day-to-day situations. So feel free, facilitator, to pause me to maybe write up a list on a whiteboard if that's available. Okay, so hopefully you've unpaused me after making that list. So now I want you to think of write a list of things that are unplanned, right? So there's day-to-day situations, right, like traffic or which hopefully we plan to, but what are the unplanned things that can be stressful to us? Facilitator, again, feel free to pause me to have this discussion. Okay, so notice when we plan for stress in something like traffic or being late to work because of traffic or something that stresses someone out personally, something that stresses me out is recording these videos sometimes, part of my job. But if I had planned for it, if I know how to work with myself and know what tools I have, that's more manageable stress than sometimes those unplanned stressors. And sometimes this can really make a difference between what stress looks like if we plan for it, if we don't plan for it. I want you to think about it while we watch this quick clip to help describe how stress can be a benefit, but how it can be a detriment to our health as well. So excuse me while I really quickly change our modes and bring this clip up here. Watch this. One little piece of paper can have a remarkable effect. Stress is stressful. If you understand a bit about what it is, you're better able to deal with it. First, though, take a few deep breaths. In fact, do that anytime you feel stressed. It helps. Stress is a survival mechanism. When danger appears, it can get you out of trouble quickly. Your body crashes up the gears and throws all its resources into getting you moving. Your heart pumps furiously to increase blood pressure. Glucose is sent to the muscles as a fuel injection, and you become totally focused on what psychologists call fight or flight. The thing is, this emergency state is only meant to last just long enough to get you out of danger. But here in the 21st century, we stress about different things, and for much, much longer. Your brain and body stay on red alert, and you'll be less able to think clearly, learn, or remember things. Take a few more deep breaths, because as you now know, stress is a physical reaction, and deep breathing helps to counteract its effects. So, what else can you do? Okay, top tips to reduce stress. First, get plenty of exercise. Let out all that locked up energy. Now, back to the problem. Get in control. Scope out the situation and how you're going to tackle it. Don't stress alone. Talk to someone. Socialize. And have a laugh. You can't laugh and quake with fear at the same time. Get down in nature on a big or small scale. And if your mind won't stop worrying, give it something else to do instead.
All right. Thank you for watching that clip. So that was a quick clip about what can be stressful to us. Again, how stress as our ancestors experienced it was helpful and can be helpful to us, and how stress can be detrimental. How those small, tiny micro stressors, where did I leave my keys? My exams are coming up. My performance evaluation at work is coming up. I have this big project due. How these things can add up and we worry about them more and more, and that becomes detrimental to our health. So that's a little bit about stress. That's a little bit about stress and how it could be helpful, how it could be detrimental to us. And our stress response, our body responds to stress in 3 different ways. We have a fight, flight, or freeze reflex. And each can be beneficial to what we are dealing with, depending on what is it that we're dealing with. Our stress responses take over at certain points. They flood our nervous system, our brains, with cortisol levels, with adrenaline, and it takes a high spike on how we respond. So if we're fighting, we fight right away. If we're freezing, then that takes hold really quickly. If we're using flight or running away or creating distance or space, we're doing that right away. So what happens is our system remains flooded, but it takes 3 times longer than that stressful event for us to then return back to balance after we experience a point or an event of stress. So I want you to think of it sort of like a heartbeat line on a monitor. So it spikes up really fast, but it takes a very long time for us to come back down. So that can also alleviate the long-term risks of ongoing stress, right? Returning back to homeostasis. And we've got to find out about other methods and learn about other things that help us remain back in balance, remain in control. And that BBC video mentioned breathing and community involvement, meeting with others as part of that larger response. And that's one of the things that really does help alleviate stress. In our old caveman days, when we would fight like that saber-toothed tiger, that person went into fight mode, slayed the tiger, saved themselves. Maybe they won a tooth out of it, right? As a souvenir later on. That was their flight response. As a way of returning back to their homeostasis, they went back to their tribe, and maybe they shared a story about what happened and the lessons that they learned, right? It's important for them to know where the saber-toothed tribe is. It's important to know that if they attack from above or a certain angle, that they could really get this response. And sharing that story with others de-stresses, or allows us to come back to homeostasis faster. So that is one of the things that we've learned, is being in nature and being part of our community, nurture, right, are the 2 things that allow for us to de-stress really, really quickly. Another thing that helps us de-stress quickly is mindful meditation. If talking to someone, your nurture group, your tribe, your people, your family, your friends, whoever is part of that community for you, isn't available, like at work sometimes, or you're, due to confidentiality, can't share details about what's going on, talking to a colleague also can help. But if that's, again, not available, then practicing mindful meditation helps. If you're not able to get outside, if you're not able to go for a walk or pet a dog or a cat or things of that nature. So what we've got to think about is developing your own self-care plan, right? There's no one-size-fits-all strategy. It has to work for everyone, right? There are common threads we can pull together that allow for us to commit to our own mental health, our emotional health, our spiritual needs, and our relationships. But there's no one plan. I can't give you one thing and say, okay, everybody, if we followed this, we'd all be well. Right? If that was the case, we would have all reached the truth about happiness, and we'd all be happy, and there'd be no world wars and peace around the world, right? We haven't gotten that far yet. I have hope. But until then, we have to develop our own self-care strategies and figure out what's beneficial for you and what's beneficial for the person sitting next to you and across from you and the facilitator and myself. We're all going to have different plans. So what that plans look like for you, I want you to think about it encapsulating all of these different spectrums of colors here: our emotions, our mind, our work, our relationships, our spirituality, and our body. All these different spectrums, that's part of our self-care plan. And this self-care plan is, again, something that we have at work. And you can have a separate self-care plan, or maybe your work self-care plan is a part of your larger self-care plan at home. That's something that you can develop and really hone in on how to manage stress and how to decompress and come back to your own homeostasis, your sense of balance and normalcy, and how we're able to do so at a quick time. So, some self care practices, again, practicing wellness as part of our daily lives helps us to maintain that work and life balance. And self care is a key component in reducing vicarious trauma or burnout or compassion fatigue, whatever you want to call it. Okay, we talked about this, that research suggests that time spent in nature and in our own communities, nurture, rejuvenates that mental reservoir. The more we do that, the more we build our internal strengths to do the work that we do. And, make no light of it, the work that we do is very important, and it can be very taxing. It's going to tap our mental reservoir and our physical reservoir in ways that normal life doesn't, because we're working with health and human services. We're working with individuals and their plight and their continual struggles and their strengths. But the full person, when we work with individuals, we have to give a lot more than if we were, I guess, designing a program so that this training can happen, right? I'm sure those engineers also created a lot of stress and had a lot of stress, but in a very different level. So social and environmental benefits exist, and they're there as protective factors that help us think about our stress, right? And that's the story of the caveman who fought the tiger, the saber-toothed tiger that I talked to you about, that they can really protect us, but also generate stress in some time too. So sometimes it's the environment, and we've got to take a break and snap out of that environment to really help facilitate our own wellness and think about how is it that we can be well on a long-term basis. So here we're going to switch to a different clip by Dr. Russ Harris on the evolution of the human brain. So please excuse me while I switch audios and bring this clip up for you.
The human mind has evolved to think in such a way that it naturally creates psychological suffering. You see, back in the Stone Age, 200,000 years ago, life was pretty dangerous for our caveman ancestors. So if a caveman or cavewoman wanted to survive, their minds had to constantly be on the lookout for things that might hurt or harm them. And if that cave person's mind wasn't good at predicting, spotting, or avoiding danger, what happened to her? The default setting of the caveman mind was safety first, and we in the modern world have inherited this. Our modern minds are constantly warning us of things that might hurt or harm us. The caveman mind says, watch out, there might be a bear in that cave, you could get eaten. Watch out, that shadow on the horizon might be an enemy from another clan, you could get speared. Our modern mind then does worrying, predicting the worst, avoiding anything that scares you, anxiety in all of its different forms. Back in caveman days, you survive an encounter with a bear or a wolf, then it's useful to replay it. It's useful for your mind to go over the events and remember what you did to survive so that you're better prepared for next time. But in our modern world, we go over and over painful memories, dwelling on them, reliving them, even when there's nothing useful to learn or the lesson has been well and truly learned a long time ago. In the Stone Age era, as a caveman or cavewoman, you have to fit in with the group. If you are alone, you will soon die. So your mind compares you to others in the group. Am I fitting in? Am I contributing enough? Am I following the rules? Am I doing anything that might get me thrown out? Now, in modern life, we're always comparing ourselves to others. But the problem is we're no longer in a small group. Our groups are enormous today, and we carry with us devices that constantly feed us images and stories of people all over the planet. This constant comparison ramps up our fear of being judged or rejected or not fitting in or just not being good enough. The caveman mind tells you you need more food, you need more water, better weapons, better shelter. The cave people who thought this way lived longer and had more offspring. Unfortunately, in the modern world, this manifests as greed, dissatisfaction, craving, wanting. It's never enough. I need more, more, more. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, these Stone Age thought patterns are intensified by the sheer pace and complexity of modern life. Our frantic existence, rushing from task to task, that never-ending to-do list. So, when your mind starts doing this unhelpful stuff, as all minds do, remember, it's not defective or abnormal, and it's not deliberately trying to make your life difficult. It's simply doing the job it has evolved to do, trying to keep you safe and save you from pain. The human mind has evolved to think in such a way that it
Okay, thank you for watching that clip by Dr. Russ Harris on the evolution of the human mind. And I hope that kind of solidified what we've been talking about nature and nurture, how they're there to help us understand our stuff, understand ourselves, understand our stress, make sense of the community and what's kind of going on around us and what happened. And again, these are protective factors that can generate stress, but we really got to think about what else, right? Well, how else do we fight off stress in the modern world? Okay, so that social and natural environment are, protective. Sorry, that was a repeat from the previous slide. Small amounts of stress, repelling previous life events to learn can help us do better. But if we flood our bodies with that stress response when we're replaying it, that cortisol, we go into our responses, right? We go into our hindbrains and think about fight, flight, or freeze. So controlling and coping with our stress helps us through that overflooding of stress and returns us back to the natural rhythm of homeostasis. So let's talk about how do you cope now, right? So this is an audience participation one, guys. So what wellness strategies do you use on a daily basis now? Facilitator, please put me on pause so that we can hear from everyone in the group. Okay, so I'm sure that you all got a chance to participate, please, about daily stressors, right? And what wellness strategies you're using to keep them at bay. So you can definitely take things like the lifestyle behaviors test and think about adding 1 or 2 positive lifestyle behaviors or decreasing a lifestyle behavior in order to increase your coping skill. We're going to take a look at what that looks like here in a second. But another thing for you to think about is to add some of these mindful meditative practices to your everyday life. And hopefully we can practice some of that today. Again, facilitator, after I've described the activity, feel free to put me on pause so that you can practice this with the group. The first one is called a 4x4 technique, and there's 2 versions of it. I'll describe the version that I do first, and then we'll talk about the one that is in yoga practice again. So the 4x4 technique is a breathing technique. If you have asthma or any breathing issues, please be mindful of that and modify this breathing technique to your own needs. Watch out, I wouldn't want anyone to suffer any harm, so please, medical warning there. So the 4x4 techniques asks one to breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, and repeat this 4 times. So that's the 4th cubed kind of a method. So Please put me on pause. I could guide the first breathing technique together, just so you know what it looks like, and then facilitator, we can have the group participate in 4 sessions of doing this. So what you would do is you would breathe in. I would count. So starting from now. Find a comfortable place in your chair, and breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's a short example of one regimen of that 4x4 technique. So facilitator, put me on pause and please lead the group through a full 4x4 technique. Okay, so I hope you have done so. And that's one great strategy. I want you to think about, now that you've done that 4x4 technique, how does it feel? How does it feel in your body? What were you thinking about? Share that with the facilitator or with each other. What were you thinking about? If you were anything like me, I couldn't think of anything, right? Because our breathing is controlled by our autonomic system, meaning we're not aware of it. We don't have to think about breathing to breathe. But when we bring our breathing to pace and we start regimenting our breathing, our mind says, oh no, if you want the controls on breathing, I'm not going to let you think about anything else because it's that important. What if you prioritize your phone over your breathing and we pass out, right? Our brains don't want us to do that. So when we start thinking about our breathing, that's kind of all we can think about, which is great because it helps us focus, recenter our brain, our energy, and really think about how is it that we can hone in on our present self. And this helps reduce our negative thoughts or thought cycling, or for us to ruminate on something over and over again and really bring ourselves back to a level of homeostasis or resetting ourselves. Another technique is a self-guided visualization. There are many techniques on YouTube. You can Google them on guided or visualizations or self-guided visualizations. And this is also another technique that you can participate in. I have one that I'll share with you. I call it the happy place. And what I do is I find my happy place. And I'll share that with you guys. My happy place is a beach, is a particular stretch of a beach in a certain area around here. And this beach has a lot of emotional, significant, meaning to me. So I call it my happy place. So in my self-guided visualization, when I go there, I manage to think of about all of the 5 senses and what I would do there if I was at that beach myself. So I think of the smell of the beach. I think about the smell of the beach. So I think about what I would smell at the beach, what I would see at the beach, what I would feel or touch at the beach, what I would hear at the beach, and what it would taste like to have, let's say, salt water on my lips, right, from the beach, from the ocean waves. So those are some of the ways that I can go to my happy place and kind of take a break, a 5-minute break during my 15-minute break schedule time, and really unplug and find a way to de-stress. So if you wouldn't mind, I would like to lead you through a self-guided visualization to that beach now, if that's okay with you. And again, I encourage you to find your own happy place. And we'll lead to talk about what that looks like later on. But I want you to think about that space. So please, if everyone could find a comfortable space in your chair, so really get comfortable. Maybe it's leaning forward, maybe it's back. Maybe it's folding your arms and resting your head on your arms on the table. Maybe it's your knees to your hands. uncrossing or crossing your legs. If you would like to, you are welcome to close your eyes. Know that you are in a safe space. If you do not feel comfortable closing your eyes, that's perfectly fine too. Soften your gaze and find a place where you can gaze and soften your gaze so that you can concentrate on the picture that we're painting and hold that in your mind. Again, I remind you, take a deep breath in, let it out. And I want you to, in your mind's eye, think about your favorite beach. I want you to think about what that looks like, seeing it in front of you, and taking steps towards that beach from your vehicle. You're moving on from the parking lot onto the Rockies area, onto the sandy area. You're removing your shoes as you feel that wonderful sand between your feet. You're making your way down to the beach and you feel that hot sand touch the soles of your feet. You find a place and you sit down and you feel that warmth all over the bottom of your legs and on your hands as you touch the tops of the sand. And as you take a deep breath in and a deep breath out, you dig your hands further into the sand and you start to feel the layers of that warm sand give way to cooler areas underneath. And you look around and you see children running and dogs playing and families and individuals enjoying themselves, walking. You can see their clothing waving in the wind. And you can hear the wind gush in your ear, the waves crashing and ebbing onto that shore. And as you get up, start to walk towards the beach, you feel the sand get harder and tougher onto the sturdiness of that beach floor. And you start to walk parallel to the waves. And as you feel the ocean right next to you, you feel the energy of the waves as they crash. Maybe you step onto water and feel that jolt of cold as it meets your soles of your feet. And you walk and you're leaving your footprints behind on that sand as you see families, as you hear the ocean, as you feel the sunlight on your skin. And you lick your lips and you taste the saltiness of the ocean air. And you think to yourself, I am calm. I am at peace. I am present. I am happy. I am enough. I have light. I want you to focus on those things as you're walking down the beach. And as you get a moment, I want you to think about yourself back in your room, back in this training room, in your body, on your chair. And as you're coming back to yourself, I want you to bring what you felt on that beach back with you. I want you to bring the feelings of being enough and being light and being present and happy back with you. The feeling of being on that beach as your sense of self. And when you get a moment, please open your eyes, focus your gaze, look up, breathe together. Thanks for participating in that self-guided visualization. Facilitator, please feel free to pause me. I'd love for everyone to talk about their experience of what that felt like. So please share. What did it feel like to have a small break and go to a happy place, at least my happy place? Okay, so I hope that was beneficial to most. Again, I want you guys to think about your happy place. For some, that might be a bed. For some, that might be a backyard. For some, that might be a place you've never been. It could be a place in a video game or in a movie or in a make-believe place or in a book, but a place that makes you the most happiest. It doesn't have to exist in reality, right? You could construct it. but someplace where you can go where those feelings of happiness just sink in, and you can bring that back with you to re-energize you to continue on to your day. So we've practiced those two techniques. Tomorrow, hopefully, there'll be time for you to do some self-care review with the facilitator. I'd like to assign you that homework of at least practicing one this evening, right? Either the 4x4, the self-guided visualization, or any other breathing technique. I'd like for you to practice that tonight so that tomorrow you can review that with your facilitator and have some talks about what that was like. And this could be part of your self-care plan, right? Part of my self-care plan is I use this 4x4 technique in my driveway at home when I transition between my work self and my personal private self. So I use a 4x4 technique to sort of pull out of my everyday stresses at work and remind myself of all the other social and roles that I play in others' lives, and for me to get back to who I am. Again, that's something that colleagues have shared with me they do on their way to work to put their travels about the stressors of day-to-day life, of getting ready, of traffic behind them before they step into work as well. So wherever this would be beneficial for you to do, I would advise, please do not participate in the self-guided visualization or the 4-to-4 technique when you're driving or operating heavy machinery, as you need to maintain your focus. And these are both breathing techniques that you should do in a safe place where you will not be interrupted or have no other obligations to do. All right, so I want you to now follow along with me to take the self-care assessment first and see what your score on that self-care strategies is like. So I'm going to put the self-care assessment up here for you to review. There it is. It's this 3-pager that is from Perlman, Staff, and Swakny. It's from Transforming the Pain Workbook on Vicarious Traumatization. This was one of the first books out on vicarious trauma. And this worksheet is not exhaustive, but it is meant for you to use this rating scale between I never do this, 0 to I do this well frequently, and how you take care of yourself in different areas of our lives, in our spiritual lives, in our environmental lives, in our work lives. And we are asking for you to sort of have an overall score. So just rate this for yourself. And again, put me on pause while you guys do this worksheet. Okay, so I hope everyone was able to complete that. I hope there's plenty of time for you to do so. Self-care is a preventative practice, right? It's a practice that protects us from stress and burnout. It enhances our well-being, and it gives us the ability to bounce back from stressful situations faster. So adding these self-care practices to each one of our domains can really help us support our full selves, who we are as a whole human being, as a whole individual. So I want you to think about what situations, like we covered a couple of slides ago, what are some positive strategies you can currently add to your self-care plan that you saw here? And what are some strategies, some negative, that you can remove from your everyday life that will help you also increase wellness and balance in your everyday practice? So some things for you guys to think about. So next, we're going to talk about maintaining our self-care, right? We're building our self-care. So these are adding principles and eliminating barriers. You've got to think about what self-care things you've identified, what's important to you, and how you can commit to doing them on a regular basis. So we're going to take a look at this maintenance worksheet. It's going to help you identify your current activities and add new ones. It's also useful to identify any obstacles that get in your way. There's a space provided for you to write about that as well. And, I want to remind you, follow your plan. Set reminder alarms at the end of your day or at the beginning of your day. Use checklists or put it on your Post-it notes. If on your checklist you have all the things that you have to do today, add the 4x4 technique in there, right? Add lunch in there. Add a walk in there so that you remind yourself to practice and maintain your self-care plan during your day-to-day life as well. So here's the maintenance self-care worksheet. And it's got 3 pages. The first one is your current practice, what you're doing right now. And it could be nothing, right? It could be 0. And then it could be that some of these practices hit multiple aspects of what you're doing. I want you to come up with some new practices, right? That's the first page. And the second page is about all the different domains. And this last page talks about barriers to maintaining those self-care strategies, how you can address these barriers, remind yourself to practice self-care, any negative coping strategies that you'd like to reduce. And if so, if you want to eliminate them, what can you do instead? So here's some things for you guys to think about as well. And facilitator, please put me on pause while everyone fills out my self-care worksheet. All right, so I hope everyone's filled out that wonderful worksheet. And the next step is for us to be prepared, right? Because life sometimes throws curveballs at us that we didn't see coming. So we're focused on our maintenance and our self-care plan. But one of the things we have to do is also plan for those emergencies, those extreme circumstances that are rare, but they can occur. There's a crisis on the shelter floor. Someone struck someone else. There was an accident that you witnessed. There's a healthcare emergency, right? To do this, there's a framework that's been developed, a self-care worksheet for an emergency that you do. You should do this before you're faced with a crisis or feel overwhelmed. So if this today is a good time for you, you do not feel overwhelmed right now, and I really hope you don't, I would love for you to participate in building your own emergency self-care worksheet. This does not, suggest that you will face every situation and know what to do, right? But it helps us think about what you can do just in case so that we can be prepared. Maybe some of these strategies will work, maybe they won't, but for us to go through them together. So here's a emergency self-care worksheet. And it's very hard for us to think about what to do when times get tough. So it's nice to have a plan. And what should be in this? You should think of 3 general areas, what to do, what to think, and what to avoid, right? In all 3 of these domains. So I would ask you currently, if you're feeling in a good space, to sit down and fill out this 3-page worksheet. Here's examples of things to avoid, some examples of people to avoid, of negative self-talk to avoid. That's the 3rd section there. A list of what is good for you and what to think, and some questions you can ask yourself. So I'd love to invite you to put me on pause, facilitator, and for you guys to fill this out together. Again, if this is not a good time, please take this with you and count it as homework to finish tonight. Okay, so I hope you finished the emergency self-care worksheet. I hope that was beneficial and helpful to you. And again, this helps us prepare. So you want to do this before you face a crisis, before you feel overwhelmed. So we have a plan in place. And again, these are operational things. These are things that you want to use. So keep them in a place that's accessible. If you're going to put them as part of your training binder, make sure you have your training binder with you. And that's something that you carry with you or is accessible in your office space or in the community, wherever you are. Some folks even take a picture of the self-care strategies and they save it in a particular place on their phone so that it's readily available to them. Whatever works for you. Okay, so next, I want you to make a commitment to yourself, right? Just as that flight attendant says, you need to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. I want you to take a moment, think it over, and make a personal commitment to yourself, to your own self-care. You deserve this. We work in a very tough field. So make it a commitment to do self-care strategies each and every day, even if it's 1 or 2 things that allow for you to increase your wellness. If you find making a commitment to be a challenge, then take some time to explore your reservations. Do you have a tendency to put others before yourself? The truth is that if your self-care is not worked on, you're not well to handle some of the stressors in life. So it's not only essential for your well-being, it's also essential for you to be an effective and successful professional in your field and meet your commitments. So by being a professional, you are practicing self-care. That's something that we talk about in customer service, that if we don't practice good self-care, we can't provide that to other people. So taking the time and making a commitment to your own self-care and your own needs is very important. And again, share your plan. Once you've developed your plan, you've made your commitment, remember that friends, families, peers, your colleagues are good resources and additions. So maybe you want to share your plan with someone and have them share it with you so that you can really commit to joining a support together. Here's some tips on how to start a support group or a discussion, and I'll bring this up for us to see here, but it doesn't have to be something that you do so formally. It could just be that you ask someone for help. But here it is, some tips on how to start a support or discussion group about how do you get the people involved, how do you get the planning done, find a place, how do you advertise it, and how do you program it. This will be part of your worksheets, but I want you to think about committing and sharing this plan with others informally. Again, sometimes it does help to open a support group, and that steps are there for you to do so. But I want you to think about how is it you can engage those that you trust and are professional, that you have good relationships with and can let someone in to your life in you supporting your own wellness plans and your own wellness goals. And the last part is, now that you've done all of this, you've got to follow your plan. You've got to complete the assessment. You've completed the assessments. You've done the worksheets. You know the core elements of what makes you you and what helps you feel better in stressful situations. The final step is for you to put it all together and keep track of how you're doing. So keeping track of your progress is going to help you recognize your successes, identify and address any difficulties that you may have not anticipated. Some people use a calendar checklist. I personally use a timer at the end of my day. I have a regimen that I use where I check in with myself. I do a 4x4 technique. I get ready for bed, and I sort of just check in with my day. Did I do any self-care today? What did I do to practice wellness today? And just so that I have that. And then there's a calendar remind me in case I'm in stress and I don't get to sort of prompt myself to do that. My phone will do that for me. It'll prompt me to do a self-check-in on how I'm following my self-care. So do that as whatever strategy works for you. Don't forget, you can always revise your plan. It's also important to use your emergency plan as needed, as circumstances arise. And then when you get in a better place, think about revising that as well. This is very close to also having a wellness recovery action plan, if you're familiar with that training or with those evidence-based practices. But this is something that you can do in recognizing your own self-care on an easy level without really committing to a larger systems change, I should say. Some other options for you here at HomeFirst are to utilize case conferencing. I normally lead the case conferencing on Tuesdays between 10 and 11. However, if I'm on leave or not available, this is not a service that's offered. So I want you to think about case conferencing with your program coordinators or with your directors in team meetings and thinking about how you can process some of the tougher cases and find direction of how to get through. Again, this is using your colleagues or your nature to help resolve some of the issues that are going on. Reaching out to your supervisor, having a one-on-one on strategies about what's helpful and what's not, and using our emergency assistant program provided by HomeFirst so that you can really use private counseling services, individual services for you to meet your needs. And these are confidential. HomeFirst does not get a report of who used emergency assistance programs. In fact, we don't even there's nothing sent to HR. All it says is, pay this, and that's it. We don't see the number of people that saw or when they reached out or nothing at all. So the emergency assistance program information should also be provided to you at this time. Facilitator can provide that for you, and that's another way for you to help follow your plan, implement this plan, and continue your self-care processing. Here are some of the resource sources that I used today. From the University of Buffalo, I used their self-care development kit, the BBC on managing stress, and the happiness trap. Again, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask the facilitator about self-care. I hope these strategies were helpful to you, and I hope to speak with you again in another training that we do here. Again, welcome to